All right, and we're live online too. Hello and welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. This is incredible. What an amazing turnout, and hello on Crowdcast as well. This is incredibly exciting. Thrilled to be able to host this evening Eileen Myles and Nate Lippens. Just ecstatic for this. I'm Mike Wendt. I'm the programming director here at Woodland Pattern. I'd like to begin by saying that we at Woodland Pattern acknowledge that here in Milwaukee we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigami, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. We further acknowledge the grave evil colonialism introduced to these lands through genocide as well as slavery, but also via racist and xenophobic beliefs, laws, and practices that continue to inflict harm upon Black, Brown, and Indigenous lives. We honor those who have lived and do live now at these intersections of identity and experience and are committed to the active dismantling of white supremacy. So excited for this. We've called this event A Working Life, Lyrical Labor at the Margins, and it will both be a celebration of the book, A Working Life, just out by Eileen Myles, as well as further conversation, and you'll hear that conversation, so I don't need to talk too much about that. But I don't even know what to expect. This event is presented as part of the first function of poetry. That is a series of readings, conversations, and workshops focused on the intersection between poetry and social justice, which is made possible with support from the National Endowment for the Arts. So thank you very much, NEA, if you're watching or here, wherever you may be. But truly, thank you. As we're celebrating A Working Life, the book A Working Life, of course, I want to make sure that you know that we have copies for sale, which I think you probably could not have missed coming in the door. But that fabulous display, as well as that, and then as well as copies of Nate Lippens' wonderful novel, My Dead Book. Highly recommend you pick up a copy or copies of each of those, plural. It's beach read season is coming, so you can gift them to your friends and family. And I'm sure also that the authors would be willing to sign copies for you, although they can say no if that's... We also have these two limited run print pieces that we made in-house here, one piece by Eileen and one a piece by Nate. And those are a gift to you, so inquire at the counter if you would like those. And just getting through the business here first. And then I hope that you'll join us for upcoming events. Well, I guess before I get to the events, here in the gallery, this wonderful exhibition, installation completed just today, courtesy of art director Marla Sandvik. Looks beautiful, and Bruce Meets Adam, work by Adam White-Osers. So if you have not already, after the reading, maybe take some time and spend some time with it. Or it's just up, you can come back and view it until sometime in June? August? What? Oh, even better. I don't know what time it is, what month it is right now. End of August, great. And then events tomorrow, we'll be hosting Pang. Alternating Currents Live will present The Bridge, another ensemble from The Bridge. Bring touring ensembles of Chicago-based and French improvisers who do tours in the Midwest and in France. Always incredible shows, so that'll be tomorrow at 7. And then one more thing I want to mention is a new open mic that's going to be starting, Resound Return. That'll be the last Friday of the month, each month, starting this last Friday, which is next Friday, April 28th. If you follow that, 7 p.m. and hosted by Antonio Vargas Nieto. This will be a place to incubate new work and dust off old poems. And then just a quick roadmap. So first there will be readings from Nate and Eileen, and there will be a more moderated conversation up here, and then there will be a Q&A. So that's why I want to bring this up now, so you can be thinking about all the questions you want to ask. Same for those of you tuning in on Crowdcast. Those here in the room, I'll repeat this, but if you raise your hand, I'll bring a mic to you. That way the people tuning in on Crowdcast can hear the questions. Those of you on Crowdcast, if you type questions into the chat really at any time during the evening, we can read those back, and we will try to get to as many as time allows. Okay, that's enough announcements, right? Now it's my great pleasure to kick things off by introducing first Nate Lippens. Nate Lippens is the author of the novel My Dead Book, which was shortlisted for the Republic of Consciousness Prize in the UK. Congratulations. His fiction has appeared in the anthologies Little Birds and Pathetic Literature, as well as in responses to Derek Jarman's Blue and Pale Blue Dot, both out from Pilot Press London. With Pilot Press, he also edited the anthology zine Truant. Lippens' debut novel, My Dead Book, I'm going to talk about My Dead Book, even though I know you're reading from Ripcord, but is a compact volume that offers an expansive series of richly drawn and intimate portraits. Characters who feel real are made palpable through their idiosyncrasies and interests, their joy, pain, diction, and often their deaths. The vignettes are lucid, marked by descriptive prose, while they seem to arrive by free association, by train of thought and memory, seem being the operative word because this book is no doubt arranged with great care. Yet I think of the book's narrator, quoting Peggy Lee, quote, "I don't like marking time. I like to think of everything as now. Haven't scientists more or less proven that's true?" I'm not going to try to do an impression. But, and Lippens' writing often feels that way. Compressed time where present and past coexist, intermingling with fleeting thoughts, film scenes, insomniac quizzes, and channel flipping, everything now and now and now, whole lives conjured and lost, and all the while, as Hedy L. Coulty notes, quote, "There is so much love and sadness and all the randomness of what makes a life, and who you meet along the way. My ghosts are summoned by his ghosts." Lippens' writing is marked by an acuity of recollection, recollection, a care and attention to detail, a sense of what matters. As Eileen Myles notes of My Dead Book, quote, "Nate's balancing act works because the heart of this novel, is true, even though it's often heartless. It's simple. He knows what things are worth. When you need the sea or a bird, they're there like they never were before." Please welcome Nate Lippens.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay, or? Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I would just like to thank Woodland Pattern. This was, My Dead Book came out on Publication Studio in November 2021, and this was the first place that carried it. And it didn't have a distributor, it didn't have Amazon, so it meant a lot to me that it was here. So it's a great honor to be here tonight and to get to read with Eileen again. I'm reading from Ripcord, which actually peaked, that's in the broadside is kind of the opening part of that, but I'm going to be reading some of that. After writing a whole book about death, I thought I was sort of done, and then I realized, I'm not done with this narrator. I want to keep sort of writing about aging and queer aging specifically. And so when I started writing this, I thought, I don't really want to write about death, and I ended up writing about sex. So I'm going to be reading a lot about sex. And I was realizing today as I was looking at it that I'm a lot more comfortable reading about death. So I'm going to try and do this justice, but suddenly I was reading it and I was like, oh, this is going to happen in public. So here we go. So this section is called Prowl, and it's from Ripcord. Some people get the glory, some people get the glory hole. I remember when I was young, spying an old man, probably 40, sitting at a gay bar in short shorts and a tank top, smoking with the slow motion of a 1970s movie, like he had all the time in the world. When the door opened, he appraised new arrivals. I examined his getup, his fussy little gestures, and his longing stare with repulsion. To be so old and still on the prowl. Well, I'm well past his age, and I can bring the prowl to my door, and I do. I'm the age where young men's daddy issues work to my advantage, but I can't bankroll my end of the deal. I'm stuck with the truly damaged, seeking validation or abuse, or abusive validation. Bring the belt, one messaged. The next morning, my hand was swollen. I'd sprained it, spanking a low-level brand strategist in a $100 designer jockstrap. I told my friend Charlie about the injury because I'd once loaned him money for the dentist after he chipped his tooth on a wedding band at a glory hole. Charlie says, why not age disgracefully? I mean, have you seen what passes for dignity? For us, it's always been an awkward age. After a disaster date with a guy who said, I guess I thought you were butch by your photo, I changed my profile to 5'7" femme, with the face of an embittered sea captain, the voice of a pissed-off fake concierge, and a body like an unmade bed. I've never maintained a romantic relationship for more than 2 years. I don't have children or pets, and I recently purchased, nurtured, and murdered a cactus. An acquaintance asks if I'm dating anyone. He has a friend in mind. I say I'm retired. I came out at 14, which means I've been out for 30-some years. I should be able to retire. I don't expect a watch, maybe an acknowledgement, thanks for your service, maybe a moment of silence. I'm simply done. I'm not good at romantic life. I make bad decisions and stick with them. Loyalty to poor judgment is one of my most pronounced character traits. I'm bowing out too late to have any honor, but before I can cause more harm. Not exactly noble, but at least belatedly honest. I have so vigorously rejected my role as gay sidekick agony aunt that when someone tried to tell me about their marital problems this week, I said, are you hitting on me? Imagine a life without shame, Charlie says. I believe that's called death. Charlie is not a hugger. We both joked about being raised by wire monkey mothers. I once explained my mostly forgotten childhood to him this way. When I was about 6, my paternal grandmother told a group of church women I had introduced hugging to our family. My friend's 13-year-old daughter asks why I never married, and I tell her I haven't found the right one. I don't say marriage didn't exist as an option when I was young, and I learned to think and live completely outside those situations. I don't say part of rejecting the victim badge was turning what I was taught was wrong and disgusting about me into excess and glory. Make trauma into refusal. Things have changed, as my fuck buddy Dustin says, but I can't undo a lifetime. Later, I teach my friend's daughter how to play triple peak solitaire. I'm good at this, I say, and the best part is, no one knows. I'm lying in bed, awake, wishing I knew how to tell the man sleeping next to me what it was like to be in my head, but knowing that would mean he wouldn't love me anymore. That knowledge meant I couldn't love him either, and in the end, I have to tell him. I don't want to hurt him, but I know I will. How do you tell someone you don't love them anymore? He cries, but I don't hold him. I meant for the pain to be quick. I'd rehearsed for days beforehand. Once it was happening, my words were an echo. He asked how long I hadn't been in love with him, and I talked around the answer, because there's a fine line between honesty and cruelty. When I was young, I moved so frequently every address was a forwarding address. My broken heart then was my family, and now it's everything else. The faint echo of all the other ones. Charlie calls this the chamber, a room one enters where the present and the past are, if not indistinguishable, then blurred beyond recognition. You're peripatetic, someone once said. I knew of people who called themselves travelers and were always looking for adventure. What I mean is they had money, not on them, but back home, money from home. I didn't have money, and the people back home didn't have money, and they didn't want to hear from me anyway. Home has always been a strange word. For years, I referred to where I grew up to as a child as my mother's home. The distinction flew past most people, but it sticks out to the right ones. 15, the summer before I left, my mother drove in silence and I talked. We were going in circles. That building was definitely on repeat. We were lost, but she wouldn't admit it. I stopped talking so she could focus, as if she'd been paying attention to me, as if that was the problem. Finally, she said, "This isn't working." And I thought she meant the drive. Then it hung in the air. Us, me and her. My mother was breaking up with me. After I left, my mother told people I ran away. She didn't want to be the mother who kicked her kid out, so she got to be abandoned. And I sure didn't want to be the victim, the queer kid who gets thrown out of the house. What good did that do me? At best, a bed somewhere for a while, some pity. At worst, vampires who smelled desperation and descended. My mother and I both got what we wanted. As someone who spent years having to code switch and lie to survive, when I hear people brag about their authenticity and honesty, I hear privileged and lazy. People say they want honesty, but not this. I admit my faults, and if they insist on them from a place of superiority, what they imagine as moral or ethical, I enumerate their reciprocal faults according to their own standards. Yes, I am fragile and erratic, and you are a serial monogamist reenacting your childhood abuse and abandonment in a looping series of relationships that are codependent, cruel, and worst of all, boring. The number of texts I have typed and deleted this morning, 5. Expression outpaces doubt, but doubt has the final word, silence. I await disaster, by which I mean Dustin's text. His messages are too short or run on with drink and maudlin words. A voice talking to itself, fantasies talking to other fantasies. What concerns me is wanting them. Clearly, they need no one. A loop intelligible for the length of a tinny anthem, then dark. I station myself where the bar curves, riveted by performances of unembarrassed need. All around me, it's duck, duck, goose, misery, misery, magnificence, obsession, obsession, disappointment. A man moves through the bar like he's panhandling for sex. An older guy, my age, has a young man buttonholed by the corner mirror. Sugar Pop's eyes are like 150-watt bulbs screwed into a small reading lamp. It hurts to look at them. Beside me, 2 men are sparring or flirting. You're hurting my feelings. You have feelings? I do. I have a sensitive side. The shaft of your dick doesn't count. In the mirror, behind the bar, I'm not bad. Might be good to have a body beside me, something solid to keep me from floating away. Not a smart idea, but this isn't a thought. This is just blood moving around. Dustin finishes and hunts around for his smokes. I stand with my jeans still unbuttoned, grab the pack of cigarettes and lighter, which have slipped behind the couch cushion, and hand them over. Dustin fumbles one from the pack and concentrates on the flame. I button up and walk to the bathroom, where my wild face slides into the mirror's view. Back to the living room, Dustin, coat on, wavers as he leashes his dog, a scrubby mop named Angie. Dickinson? I asked upon introduction. He looked confused. You mean Emily? Never mind. He told me Angie was named after a friend who died. What a hell of a tribute, picking up shit in memory. I'll walk you down. Angie needs to go out. The words are slurry, yet determined. Dustin wants me to clear out. His husband will be home from work soon. I wear Lee's blue and black checked flannel shirt, an X large that drowns me, and remember leaning against him and resting my head against his shoulder. 3 springs ago, snow still patchy on the ground, I smoked by a wood pile and hitched up Lee's long johns, which I was wearing. I thought of his body and the cigarette keeping me from it. A big man with a beard and hair, long hair. For an atheist, I sure have dated a lot of men who look like Jesus. Lee was hot, on an actual body temperature level. Wrapped around me, I sweated under his heat like I might dissolve. Cigarette finished, back in bed, Lee kissed my forehead. He held my face in his hands and said, I'm going to give you a beautiful life. I wanted what he said. I wanted to believe. But then the blip thoughts. Why must you lie for both of us? And also, who do you think you are? Lee was almost a foot taller than me, so one night we got out the soft tape measure and laid it all out, comparison. Thigh circumference, knee to groin, forearm length, clavicle to navel, ball hang in a 70-degree room in January, and wrote the numbers in a grid notebook. Months later, we were in the dark, the end of a long night. We're going in different directions, he said. The fact he thought I had a direction broke my heart. We'll figure it out, I said. I already have. The heat drained from me, not a wisp of love in his voice, efficient, businesslike. I wanted to be far away from its rounded baritone gone flat. Many mornings I'd been in that same spot listening to water run in the bathroom, and sometimes I'd gone in and joined. Once when Lee was gone to work and left me in his apartment sleeping, I woke, picked up the paperback on the nightstand and opened it to see his neat signature in the fly leaves. Such schoolboy claims made me smile. I wanted to be the book. A string of worn and worthless words came out of his mouth, phrases dumb people make to break up with other dumb people. I stood and it was like I'd never been there. In the dark, I couldn't see the ripple on Lee's bed. I dressed, moved to leave, and heard my name twice as I closed the door. The hallway was bright and blurry. I took the stairs so I wouldn't risk being in the elevator riding down with other people, leaving other beds. I know how to leave, and I know how to stay, but I've never understood anyone else's reasons for leaving or staying. Lee once told me it was better to be rejected for who you are than to be loved for who you are not. Both demonstrated a solid sense of self I can't relate to. I've spent too much time trying to find a place in the world, sometimes literally a roof over my head, that the luxury of imagining rejection as a choice is laughable. I've mistaken many people for friends, for kindred spirits, not really understanding that they had chosen to opt out of conventional life, and I'd been thrown out. They could go back, and they carried their values like shrapnel, and I had different wounds that reacted to different weather, and there was no going back. 30 years ago, when the first man I was in love with broke up with me, I left Seattle and took the train to Chicago. I'd never seen much of the West and was in no hurry to arrive and face my confusion. A teenager and her baby sat beside me. She told me she was headed home to Iowa after breaking up with the baby's father. Her parents didn't know she was coming, or that they had a grandson. Twice she left the infant with me to go smoke when the train stopped. The third time she left, I told him a story, some bastardization of Peter Rabbit I half remembered, and then I realized the train was moving again, and she hadn't returned. An hour passed, and I entertained that she had abandoned her son, and I would keep him. When she did come back, she said, I met a guy. We hung out in the club car, and I could smell booze on her. The next day in Iowa, I said farewell to my almost son and wished his mother luck. We didn't exchange information because I wanted to pretend things would work out for all of us. Are we mostly paper dolls to one another, a row of silhouettes with food allergies, kinks, and gripes? I understand how someone who was once considered beautiful struggles as they age. I understand not because I'm compassionate or kind, but because I see they're experiencing loss, and I've always lived in the place they are now relegated to. I can't extend a welcome, though, because there's no meeting ground. They remember where they came from, and I remember where they came from, too. I'm only visible to them now. I saw them all along. Charlie shows me the profile for the guy who gave him herpes. Underneath the herpes guy's name, he's written, I have a hunger for freedom, a passion for helping, and a desire to spread good. Good. We both laugh until we cry. 40 individual muscles in the human face, and my frown lines are the strongest. I know it doesn't help to think if certain people weren't dead, the world would be more companionable, even, especially if it's also true. Charlie tells a story about Sam, our friend who died 20 years ago, and his eyes get teary. Okay, let's get a drink, I say. I'm broke. I'll spot you, come on. I don't want you buying me drinks. I should be buying you drinks. Is this a chivalry thing? Get your fucking coat. Afterward, soused, Charlie sleeps on my couch. I remove his shoes and carefully lay a blanket on him. On the porch, I smoke, angled to watch both the intersection where traffic whizzes along and inside where Charlie doesn't stir. Jesus Christ, it's cold. When Tuesday Weld was asked by a reporter what drove her into seclusion in the 1970s, she responded, I think it was a Buick. My urge to escape or at least reclaim my mind from the world, from these men, to slow my attention, to put my phone in a drawer, read a book in bed uninterrupted, let the day and its malcontents run wild and unknown. You know, alone and forsaken can be a kind of heaven. When I was younger, escape artists fascinated me. Take your pick: handcuffs, straitjackets, bags, coffins, chains, barrels, burning buildings, fish tanks. I read about Houdini and illusionists and vanishments. D.B. Cooper, the name the FBI gave the unknown man who hijacked a plane, demanded a ransom, and parachuted in the night over southwestern Washington state. He was never identified or apprehended, and I went to the public library and read about him: parachute stunts, night jumps, and canopy collisions. What I wanted to know was how to go unfound. Once a year, maybe twice, Hugh comes to town, and I watch him age. Crepey elbow, sunspots, thinning hair. This year his neck changed. My hand smooths his rogue eyebrow hairs. We've slept together on and off for 4 decades. He holds me because he can, and he's always known how, since we were in an attic in a house under foreclosure. Now we're middle-aged men in a hotel room, and morning turns black to gray rain. Hugh sleeps with his arm over me, and I remember what it is to love someone, even if that love is in the past. I mean, romantic love. The rest of love pours out of everything, emanating from this bad furniture, cheap, heavy draperies, car horns 5 floors below. They all conduct the feeling, so it can be lost. Hugh stirs, rolls on his side, and it all breaks apart, as it should. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate. That was fantastic. My notes are out of order. Uh-oh. Okay. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Eileen Myles, who perhaps needs no introduction, but I wrote this. So, Eileen Myles is a poet, novelist, and art journalist whose practice of vernacular, first-person writing has made them one of the most recognized writers of their generation. Pathetic Literature, which they edited, came out in 2022. Their newest collection of poems, A Working Life, is out right now. Their fiction includes Chelsea Girls, which just won France's Inrecuptible Prize. Oh, that's terrible, I'm sorry. Ouch. Hopelessly monolingual. For Best Foreign Novel, Cool for You, Inferno, A Poet's Novel, and Afterglow. Their writing on art was gathered in the volume The Importance of Being Iceland, Travel Essays and Art. Books of poetry include Evolution, I Must Be Living Twice, and their Super 8 road film, The Trip, is on YouTube. Of course, Eileen Myles' writing has been met rightly with much praise over many years. Maggie Nelson has said, quote, Myles' poetry is kinetic, ecstatic, muscular, hilarious, sorrowful, valiant, original, necessary, and timeless. Dan Kaysen has said, quote, Myles' poems set a bar for openness, frankness, and variability few lives could ever match. And all of this and more holds true for Myles' latest collection, A Working Life, where we encounter working as in maybe a work in progress, a working towards, suggestive of the movement and digression of these poems, their hinged and unhinged lines, quote, Eileen is motion, one thought floated to the next, or the work of life itself, the process and routine of it, but also the careful observations, the dailiness, but also the fundamental recognition of a larger world, the understanding that, quote, I do this and the world burns. Further, considering work in its economic dimensions, its capitalist sense, a recognition of the fundamental disparities at the heart of this country and of this world, the, quote, never-ending war this country wages against the poor and the vulnerable. But also its work as in making, creating, living in one's practice as if one's practice is itself a kind of life, which it is. As Fred Moten notes, quote, Myles moves so generously, stays so lightly, has so openly found and crafted a life as ceremony every day. And as readers, we're invited into this life, this ceremony, its moments and memories, invited also perhaps to inhabit our own such space of attention and presence. How fortunate then that we're able to share this time and place with Eileen Myles, even if only for a moment, as, quote, there's no elsewhere like this. Please welcome Eileen Myles.
Thank you, Mike, and everybody who brought me here in all the different ways, and so great to read with my friend Nate. And it's just like, how do you do it being so dark and chipper at once? I was like, it's a weird tone. I love it. I think it's exactly. I love you, and I love your writing because they do this thing. It's incredible. And And so I'm happy. I've been here a bunch of times, and I'm happy to be here again. And it's just, it's like Woodland Pattern is one of my homes. One of my writer homes in this country and in the world. So it's great to be back, and and it's just part of having a new book to touch a place that So, thank you. And it's weird. I will say this is it's not a weird book. Weird is becoming the operative word already for everything coming out of my mouth. But I've not written this book before, but I'm writing it again, I feel, And part of it is truly that I started to write in the 70s. I mean, I wrote when I was a kid, and I wrote, but I didn't think I was writing until my 20s and the 70s. And there was something really great about when I first was around in New York and with a gang of poet friends, because it just felt like we had all the time in the world. It was so great. We just laid around. We had these, I don't want to go into a thing about my generation because it really was easy in certain ways. But what was really pronounced about my experience of it becoming a poet in that was the timelessness. It's just like nobody wanted my fucking time. And so I had lots of it, and I could do anything I wanted with it, and what I wanted to do was write poetry. So it was a great apprenticeship to reality. And I've sort of wanted it ever since, because the problem with starting to do stuff and starting to be more, as you go along, your life becomes more complicated. Your working life becomes more complicated. And so I've been wanting my private 70s to come back ever since then. And so, of course, we had this experience a few years ago where, some people got sick, some people died, but other people had these whole other experiences of time. And I had one in Marfa, Texas, where I live in New York, and I have a house in Marfa since 2015. And the way it was, mostly, I have a wonderful dog named Honey, and it would be like Honey would live in. Largely, I bought a house for my dog, because I make my living doing readings a lot, and so I travel all the time, and then I would have younger artist, poet friends live in the house at my dog. So they would live at my house more than me. If I wanted to know how to figure something out in Marfa, I would have to, call Joe and say, who knows, boo, And so in that March, where suddenly the world stopped, I was going to all these great places, and suddenly I was going nowhere. And I was in Marfa for 5 months straight, and I watched the seasons change. And I just was like, and I was working on a novel that suddenly I really lost a thread of, because I felt like part of my experience of writing prose and novels was always like, I'll have a surge, and then I'll go see some people, and then and I wasn't going to see some people, and so it was just like this lazy surge, but what it was really good for was poems, I just felt like every time I turned my head there was a poem. It was like, and it really. It was a very kind of quiet, ecstatic experience, and I wrote most of this book there then. And then, and there's some of the stuff that, there's definitely a, experience of politics. I mean, when I came back to New York, I learned that the city was trying to destroy my favorite park in my neighborhood, and I, got involved with people working against that. But and there's a relationship, so there's a falling in love and there's a falling out of love, and that was funny too, because not funny too, but it was. I thought, oh shit, how many poems in this book are about her? I thought it'll be humiliating, and so I counted, and it was 30%, which is not so bad. I think I was. But the weird thing is that I don't know if I told, like when I looked at, I thought, how many people, when I did pathetic literature in the fall, I was like, how many people in this book are dead? 30%. So my new thing, I'm following 30% avidly in the world now. It's almost like if there's anything, there's 30% of it someplace, So this is the first poem in the book, and a friend of mine was interested in somebody, and why I thought I was the person capable of giving her advice. I don't know, but so this is from my friend. Nothing better for people than dogs. Nothing better than making you scream here. There were 2 super new cars and then some pink chicken fillets. I guess there were berries for sale in Scandinavia, a man in a plaid shirt, and cookies. Also, they are working in the cemetery. I can see their blue ladder from here. A man has written a book about many deaths or many things to do after. Read it, they say. But what comes after is a small idea. Now is large, rainy. Amy, I wish you luck. I sent her the book, and she never replied. I was just, I think it didn't go well. It's just, my advice was useless. This is Mary Queen of Scots. Good title, good poem title, right? It was just, give a titled person the job. Oh, and there's two things you need to know, which is there's a dog named Honey, which you already know, and then there's another dog named Butters. The whales breaking the surface of the ocean. The whales breaking the surface of the ocean, no other name. Then I knew that I became ocean too. The black and white mother knows her baby becomes knives. She misses the restaurant, and Honey runs out and takes a bite of Butter's head. So you wouldn't know what I was talking about if I didn't. Butter's head. The owner is nice. That forest in Scotland whipping by. Yes, I think this country should become free. Solaris is the interior of my sexual fantasies and pot plant, eaten by movies for years. The veil of snow curves as she drags her pile of trash on the train. This is any Butter, lightly screaming train, and I'm excited to see you. Black barns hold my contentment. Dana Ward and Mira Gonzalez and those small tubby rolls in the grass are relevant. Yellower grass. It's hay. Hedge ends the property. My this is not struck by the gun of a moment, but this tumbling green, long unseen, tiny recollections exchanging thwang, the release of a bow. Honey's safe and Butter's safe. The crown of a tree, see-through, poking over a hill, and I want my hands on the font. I want. It's a good rhyme, right? Font. Who has rhymed font and want before? I don't think. It was just. And this is called In You, and it's basically about wet things in the sink, I think. I feel very protective of wood. If it's living, you can rain on it, but in the sink it rots, so love it like a baby, worship the tree. Love the light bulb in many colors, the blonde for her brightness. Forgive me for the obvious, my love deep and translucent, troubled. The candle, love the candle for its powerful tongue, the dog for his breath, whatever sex. Politeness brings me much. I plan for your death. Mine is the end of the poem. It must be long to direct, to multiply, steam, and explode. Love the fork, its tines are how I want to be invaluable. Silly name. Love Texas like a dog in a hat. This makes my poetry. Texas looks like a dog in a hat. You just notice when you look it up. This makes my poetry rise. Replace it with heat. Keel towards me, please. Be present. I wrote on you. I write with you. I sleep on you. Hold my love. Steam my flight. Bury me deep. I am one of you, loving you well. The shame that brought us here. I write a big apology in one lifetime. I do little, open-ended at my best. Thank you for your time, for this long wedding. I mean, I have page numbers, so I don't have to turn the pages, actually. Okay, untitled. Did you indeed dance under a tree with goats in the dark? I was like, it's kind of, are you now or were you ever a witch, basically. I was just, that's all, you know. I mean, that's like a tattoo, I think, more than a poem. It was like, this one's called Lucky Kittens. I met something cool and I can't shake it. I want to write a poem to the new thing. Nothing more trans than taking a shit in the men's room in a hotel. Also, I had a perfect breakfast and I exercised, all good things, and once again I'm flying. A world without mother is a world without meat. I'm not crying, I'm flying. Honestly, I took my mother's tear from the corner of her eye. It happened when she died. I took it on my finger and I wiped it on my jeans. The rattling of paper is an exquisite disconnect, old-fashioned, all breaks, making space, always ready for a fight. My heat is instantly shadowy, like a moving hand, or sound, like no jazz at all. The death of my mother does not stop. It's a weird, when your mother dies, there's something so strange about it. I mean, we did not have a great relationship, and now I'm like, I mean, it's different again, but I'm so in touch with her. It's so weird. It's sort of like I think about my mother so much. Before it was like, I had to call her, every couple of weeks, every couple of months, and now she's just like part of the psyche. It's almost like that was always the intention. to like just totally insinuate herself into my life. This one's called The Trip. I shall miss you. Drinking grass like that, a creature drinks from a stream, it's time, and they feel their own trickle and warmth and wonder, what's that to know? My own hug somehow, the language slipping, the moon drink twice, once in my throat and once in my eyes, it's a new year. How about it? Is sleep better than death? Is day better than night? Is love better than eternity? Are dogs better than cats? Is coffee, what is coffee? Any groaning machine better than any chirping animal? Is a child better than a building? Is an unseeing woman better than not? Is heat better than ice-cold day, bright day? Better than telling the truth? Is truth the ugly thing you share? Is sharing beautiful or hurtful and cruel? Does a pen have words? In any event, endless are words like bullets tearing flesh, announcing themselves. What do they tell? Do hurtful words tell the end of something? The body always cold. The day was never new. Life is a prison. How are you? Drinking that, saying that, writing that. The puppets groan. The heating clanks. It's open to you. A box or a vista, a plate of cheese. Thank you. Somebody asked for that. Thank you for making me read it. This is again, I'm just doing everything all over again, drinking coffee and being alone, holding my pitcher's gong, she goes as the water boils, forces shushing, coming to a close. Too fast this winter sings, holds me fast, tuts this winter sweet, enveloping or no. There she is, something dark at last. It's called April 15th. At the very least, I expect my next cup of coffee to be on its way, and I can hear it. The world without coffee I expect is a kind of rebirth, but I might take this borning to the end in the way I imagine bed every day dying, a good dying, and I push my coffee against it. Hello, each day. I like day, and I thank death for my past and future. Every day from my toilet, I can see it, winter-wide, open under my bed. And I'm dying to close just that. I'm disabled like everyone by climate change, instead getting dithyrambic about it, choosing this pen, import that, and the constant cheap out my window, okay, and the trucks. When I see metaphors, I think everything. When I think dithyrambic, I dance, and ontology is just a belly button, and then I climb out of the fort. What plane am I on? My couch, you dirty slave. The word is political, even or especially referring to furniture, a case that comes and goes slowly and builds nothing. What on earth? Running my life at all times on a dirty couch. Pizza in the park with your gleaming intelligence. I think of her. I cannot resist. So what is your smartness and beauty doing for fun? What is the non-oppressive condition of love and sex? Am I even interested in doing it, squealing on my perch? Or us singing together, I hold a candle over you and you let me in. When one is letting the other come, you do feel like the great liberator, man with a lamp. The last two lovers, I would have to say, were not interested in who I am, but what am I? That's the puzzle. Sitting with my pile in this drift, bare legs, come on in. What is that? A drill next door? Kind of sweet. While I am rearing in the green leaves, bobbing out there in the light, my friend outside, an ex-lover walking around. I'm holding the line for this dithyrambic explosion of morning and everything meeting for one. The birds deep, yes. Evolution, any babies? Why, yes. Always enthusiastic that they go wide, 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 unlike that drill. I was like chiefly excited about the word dithyrambic. I was like one of those bad poetry words. This is the poet Charles Bernstein. Mrs. Jeannie. The poet Charles Bernstein was retiring, and they asked us all to write something. There's some fancy name for a sheath of poems or something. Once in Wellfleet, we were standing up to our waists in water. Susan was there inside the house, Emma too. Felix, I think, wasn't there. Anyhow, I remembered then I felt our friendship begin. This one's called WTF, as in, what the fuck? When El Presidente, and it's so weird, it's written from the innocence of 2020. It's just like, I couldn't read it for a while. It was just like, oh my God. When El Presidente mocks the disabled journalist and gives the female astronaut the finger, it's not luck. The year is named 2020 for a reason, and we have to make up what it is. It's not unusual that I'm here with you. I took last year off. I'm back. Are you back? Did you know that Duterte, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, is supported by the Marcos family? Imelda Marcos is back. That tree out the window is, I'm going to have sex in a really good way. Today's back. I'm offering a simplistic pattern for revolution, the necessary return of the conditions, hearing you pour close and putting it back in the refrigerator, beep, the return to love. The lamb named Boris saw an opening in attaching himself to a warm person who he followed around, and she asked the farmer, can I take him home? The farmer said, yes, Boris was saved from predictable slaughter. Can we save ourselves? Every cow that jumps off the truck can be free. Will you jump with me? I have picked someone warm, and she is sitting on the couch. The flames lick high. I'm stoned by the numbers of this year. 12-2020, 2-2-2020, 2-20-2020. Plenty for you, plenty for me. I relax the slats, allowing in a striped light, flames licking wildly. She's cooking a book, I'm cooking wood. Here's her beloved foot. I have followed someone warm, and look where it took me. I'm thinking how funny the Yeats line on his tombstone, horsemen pass by. There are no horsemen. He imagined futurity as antiquity. I do now, the wildness of the branches out there, some kind of speech. I doubt if this is art or labor or an advice column. I'm not lucky. You read a lot of books and then you're a sieve. Once upon a time I heard poetry. Nothing else was catching the words in the air. I do this and the world burns. I might be burning alive as a log falls and knowing that we fall, turning, whatever it means, but we must. This land is not my land. It never was. This is not high school where the bullies rule. This is the future or the earth. No battle. We're more than enough, right, to turn the blue earth, to take it home. The motion is ours. This is the first poem I wrote on Zoom. And just realized that nobody would know. You know what I mean? Like in the world, you would sit and you're like an asshole writing a poem, but suddenly on Zoom, I was like, nobody knows what I'm doing here. It's called Howl. A refrigerator makes a lot of sound, so does a bird. People always talking, full of love and pain. We started a fund, and the dogs are needing some money, and I don't know how to do it, and I'll learn from them. I'll learn from one of them. Tom's blue shirt and glasses are perfect. My T-shirt is good. My pen works. I breathe. This is my next most trans poem in this book. We put it in a local newspaper in Marfa, and people were like really disturbed. Like I'd be in a line at the supermarket where they sell it. People were like, I don't know about that poem. You know, just like, you don't want to say, what do you mean, you know? It was just like, okay, I was pushing my cart. It's called Cool and Bright. I stand up as I do in my poet's shack and piss, the toilet's black. An orange moth does its last couple of flaps, flap, flap. Pissed to death, it could be no worse. You flew. And this is called Put My House. And the person I was dating during the pandemic was like, far away. And so she kept going in New York State. She kept going, come back. And I was like, no. This is a kind of a, what do you call it? It was a solution. It was temporary. It was meant to be a solution. A mediation. Yeah, that's a better. There's a word I'm searching. I can't find it. Put my house inside the boat. Can we do that? Put my dog inside of your dog. Put these birds inside of yours. Put my ocean. Put your ocean all over my mountains. Put my mountains in there. Put my dog in yours. My dog walk is safe inside your dog walk. Let me eat inside you. Let me eat your food. Let me eat your house. Put your house inside my dog. Put your dog on my boat. Naturalize. Put my heart in yours. Put my mouth on your mouth. Put my hair in yours. Let me breathe inside you. Let me smell your guts. Put your boat in my eye. Let me eat your friends. Put these hours in, and I've been reading in front of some of them. You know, it was just like, you're the people I was going to eat. Put these hours inside your hours. Eat this bird cheap. Eat my dog's foot. Eat that ocean. Run to him or the ocean. Run to them. Hear these birds cheep. Fly to me, eat my foot. Put my house inside yours. In your mind, think me fly. This fly me home, love me now. Forget your phone, eat my heart. Run to him or the ocean. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Dog growl, cluck, click. Put my house right in there. Yeah, that's me looking out the window. Look at me. Bark, bark, bark. Put your heart inside that bark. Does anybody know who Bobby V is? Bobby V? Who's like, remember Bobby V? Yeah, I have two Bobby V. I'm waiting. I'm just giving it away now, please. I was like, there's two Bobby V lines in that poem, but nobody would ever recognize it. He was like a great pop singer, I think. Like Bob Dylan once, when asked who he was, like somebody said, who are you? And he was like, Bobby V. But he was in a band with Bobby V, I think in Minnesota. Okay, this is great. I've always had like total impatience with people who use dreams in their work. Like it was like, oh, you know, the dream sequence. It was like, here goes the Superman comic book dream section. You know, it's just going to be a lot of shit, really. And so, but then I started to wake up and open my notebook and write my dreams directly into the notebook. And I thought, this is amazing because the dream keeps morphing. You know, the dream is the most amazing object to write about because it's fleeting. And so it's like this super poetry challenge. And so, I mean, so this is one of those. It's called Monday Shit. I don't know if I'm knowing something or falling apart. I put my 2 feet together. It's Monday. Put the water on. I was dropping a man off, a dark-haired friend. I was parked in the middle of the plaza. I can't stay here. I went inside a little. I gotta go. And I went up there over the lumpy hills. The store where the women worked, my friends, an old guitar store. Everything's different now because of the pandemic. I want to go to that, I think. Can I put my bike over the counter or up there? No, because we're moving. I see plenty of room. Next, I'm all involved with them, the kids, and they're playing outside. I'm in the apartment somehow, and everyone's gone like I woke. I could have put my bicycle anywhere. It's morning. I call the children like it's morning. Where does this shit come from? And I found the morning coffee, and this is a miracle. I just called them and they came in like dogs. I dreamed this world, that's it. Does it work this way? Working, dreaming, having a life, making and dying. Why did I die to dream this? And everyone that knows me or something, somewhere or some while, I know you once in a while. I truly forgot about him. I didn't know he was going to do that. Everybody's not in a dream, but me or we find each other here. I didn't know their fucking names, but I found their children. I was first. I'm waking here. It's perfect, everything. Because coffee's like music. I thought about quitting in the future for the better orgasm. I heard that. Did it once in the 80s. We were camping and shit, and whoa. Waking from that dream into this, but my cave, my hovel, afraid to put it in a suitcase. Will my dreaming come? The feeling of flowing with you, but you have 7 stories and I have 3, possibly 3, 1 flooded with the baby. Do I know? All I know is this kid. I'm just thinking about what you're getting into as I'm making my day. How did it end this time? Feeding the yellow dog. I was looking for a parking place and it was my dike, my children, and I didn't know anyone's name. Is this the story that holds the future, or is this the day so marvelous? Pouring some of it over and over there. I think it's perfect in me, this prophecy right here. Now it holds. And this is called Memorial Day. Cat jumps into a dumpster shopping. The cat people go nuts. It's like, It's like one for the cats. Um, right? Good. Thank you. Carl's still liking it more. It's like because it gets better. It's like it has. This, I mean, maybe I'll go for it. No, I won't go for it here. This one is called X because it was the name of I used my girlfriend's, well, she was an ex already, and I used her name as the title of the poem. I thought it was like Richard Corey, and then I just thought I can't do that. Like, it's just too weird. But it's the perfect title for the poem. And if you heard her name, you would like, yes, that's the right. Erin Kimmel, right? The name of this poem is Erin Kimmel, right? The center of the universe is here, and I continue to read things about millions of... Also, in Marfa, there's a great... not far from Marfa, there's a planetarium, McDonald's Observatory, and it's so great. And so if you go there, they have some evenings... many evenings, you sign up for a star party, and you all go up on this hill, and they have all these telescopes out and all these people, and there's an amazing lecture about the solar system, and somebody has like a pointer, and they point to star systems. And for instance, I learned the amazing thing, which is that like the North Star is there, and some other star named Vesta something or other is down here, but 15,000 years ago, this star was up there. And you just feel that thing of space turning that I've always read about, but I never felt it before, and it was just incredible. But they also have you can join, be a member, and then you get the magazine called Stardate, and you learn amazing things about the solar system, including constellations. There are many, many constellations that are gone, and sometimes because they literally changed, but often, and there were novas and super, but often it was just like some king commissioned, like somebody, the astronomer for this king said, we'll call it da-da-da-da, and then the next king was like, nah, and they just got rid of it. But some of them had beautiful, like there was a constellation that was the painting studio, and all sorts of crazy, beautiful names, which, and that it was, and this is before printing, so it was a way of writing. The constellations were a form of text, which is so completely gorgeous. The center of the universe is here, and I continue to read things about millions of stars, about ice chips along the outer rim of the solar system, and the names of moons this year, that extends along the movements of the sky, our crooked Earth and our crookeder sun, the star that isn't in the constellation of the Swan. Because we are living in a gray area now, there's no reason to assume that August 1, when Saturn and Jupiter have their last kiss, will have anything to do with you or us. And the fact that I never really needed you enough will not be so important. I look up in the sky outside of your house. I have no way to read this endless black turning thing over my head that I have always loved. I'm going to read a few more, but... Okay, this is the broadsheet, and did your family say look what the cat dragged in? Is that like, so? Yeah, so you know who that means. Sometimes it's so much. I don't know. Dying and death are the big words for this. They're like boing for this book. They're all over the place. And I have so many jokes about death, but I guess we can talk about that in the conversation. Well, I bet my favorite joke about death is I guess I have some friends who have died now, like a bunch of friends, So I think of people, and then often I realize that, like, I'm 73 years old, so often I'll be in a room and I think, I'm the oldest person in the room. That's so weird, And then there are people who are older than me, but, fewer and fewer all the time. There's lots of people younger than me. So I started this new habit of thinking of my friends who are dead as the other age. Isn't that good? So like Kevin Killian, who was so great, my really good friends, Julius Caesar and Kevin Killian are both the other age. Look what the cat dragged in. Sometimes I feel like I'm in some movie about death. This rainy night, pull your hood off and get inside the eerie splashing silence of it, each eerie step. No, I do not want to get on your bus unlocking my bike. I thought about them tonight. I could try. Go on a journey, see everyone. No one does that anymore. And then we all were in the room, the Zoom room, and that's why I was thinking of them, because they were there. I don't know them at all. I could make the effort. I'd be known as them that came that one time. The whole city gleaming in my head, wet and black. I'm out in it with my groceries. I don't even want you now. I've got to say this. She showed up late, and I thought, look what the cat dragged in. It meant we were close, and there they were in my head. That's where they lived, feeding me things. Look what the cat dragged in. Would she know it was love? Would anyone? Okay, this is Diet Coke. It says, recycle me. That could just be it, right? Like I was like, I took the dog on the subway today, and today I have an alarm on my phone called Joan Mitchell. And later on tonight, I said I'd be Joaning. This dog sees everything on 2nd Ave. Not far historically from where Robert Harms met Joan Mitchell in the apartment of Joe Lasore, right over there. I think of buildings collapsing. I'm having a slice nearby. At the party, everyone's laughing. I say, I'm boning Joan tonight. I'm boning up on Joan Mitchell for the famous Woman Artist podcast. Honey badly wants a bite. The light just changed. It's bright. The kind of Stefan Grappelli violin playing while bicycles passed. Matthew said I would have sobbed. The end was so good if I had authentic feelings. We laugh. I just spent an hour Zooming with my shrink, the parade of X's in Provincetown, the man in the orange cap walking away. I would cry if I wasn't so damn joyous. He's lowering the awning on the pizza shop, but these feelings just won't go away. And okay, mice. They see a cluster of small rubber ducks and scraps of broken shells and think, I'll shit there. We describe them as brazen when they run through what actually is their home. So I begin to kill them because I'm better than them. One was seen running into the bathroom, my bathroom, and a small frail one was found dead right on the floor. And the poison is working, and I feel bad. Because in fact, I like living with them. They're part of my life, they're little shits, everywhere, and I have killed their child. They're unclean, anyone would say, but isn't it why I must kill them? But I'm unclean too, isn't that why they're here? And I generally have guests who say, this place is so small. They look around and I feel shame. And I look around usually right after a trip or in a couple of days and it's small. But not to them. They think it's huge, perfect. And that is a friend. And why don't I keep them around? Come back, come back. And I know you will. One more, and then, I think, one more and then a tiny one that is not even one. But this is called the Rape Raggedy Tiara, which I think is an incredible. People like, trigger warning. Home, which is a hamburger, a dog literally sees your meal and licks their lips. I had a moment of joy on the subway after I went to the eye doctor. I'm either there or not in terms of greatness. Blow your horn. He was good. And a little bag of grapes wrapped in paper, a nice little pouch I bought on a whim. I ate them so fast. Do you do that? There's something about the sweetness of grapes. I almost choke. Dirty grapes, fast, like secret sex, the best. Nobody knew about that. My own. The little pig is dirty on my computer. It was a joke I had with you or something I got from you, but you didn't get the holes in the stones. She didn't even notice her daughter was raped. What was she, dead then, not now? The endlessly alive mother, the one in charge of anti-social media, is losing hers, and she's awful to everyone, but her crew refuses to mention it, being loyal to her loss. But I am loyal to the loss of the present, the only loss worth noting. I should charge you by the minute, you pain in the ass. She's going, she's gone. It's winter and I'm cooking vegetables with you, and that's what I miss, and giving you holidays like a child. The cowboy rode off on Christmas, the rape raggedy tiara. Everyone goes. No one is a king. And this teeny poem called For Alex Katz, because I've known him since I was a kid. I was just like, he like is 90, and he's such a great painter, and he's still painting like crazy at 90. And I went to this show of his a couple of shows ago, and it was just nature paintings, but they were like, leaves blowing in the breeze, but there was something so fierce about them in a way that only somebody 90 years old could understand how intense nature is, you know. So I thought, what do? I'm loving, and I thought I'll write a review, and then I quickly wrote this poem in front of it and had this very sweet exchange with him. For Alex Katz, because these paintings are both coming and going, finding nature and losing it, I feel silent, but that isn't how you feel, waiting world, violent friend. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're just going to go continuously here, but I'm like 1 minute just to move from reading to conversation mode. So talk amongst yourselves.
Let me get that heavy book off.
Oh, yeah, right.
I want to help. Yeah. Just go back for a moment.
Yeah, right. Check, check, testing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this one. And maybe we'll take just a moment as people have taken a break. We'll give it a couple minutes. Move them as you need.
Nice. What's that? We're not rushing it.
Yeah, no, this is. So thank you so much again. Beautiful readings, and this is exciting. So we envisioned this, internally here. We were talking and envisioned this as a conversation that kind of has a lot. So I feel like it's worth quickly reading the description that we crafted for this event as sort of context. And it is this. In an interview with Ben Lerner, Eileen Myles has said of their generation of poets and artists, quote, "We weren't leaving America, we were making another one." In the same interview, Myles also jokes, "I am the factory," in reference to their role as a writer. The impulse to assert oneself as a poetic factory, at once within and outside of the predominant U.S. culture and its economies, has been at the center of Myles' vernacular writing for decades. What are the ethics of an outsiderism that is both imposed and self-embraced? What does it mean and require to make another America within America? And what does queer pessimism have to say about it? Eileen Myles well, I don't need to read that part. You know that they are going to read their work, and we're going to discuss it. I'm just on autopilot here reading this thing. So that's the context, and generously, actually, the wonderful Jenny Gropp and Laura Solomon have drafted some questions that come from that conversation that we had and are sort of thinking through what this conversation could be. I will remind you all we want to hear from you, so, So, we're not going to definitely get through all of these questions because we do want to hear from you, and your questions don't necessarily have to directly relate to this either, and I will remind you on Crowdcast, type your questions into the chat if you have them. But I think, following that description, I think beginning with this question, and also I was thinking of a line from what you read, Nate, but what do you think of about the term outsider? Do either of you identify with that term as a writer or as a person? And then I was struck by the line in Ripcord that some had chosen to opt out of conventional life. I was thrown out. I don't know if that exact if I got the language exactly right, but I don't know how that relates exactly. But that bounced around my mind when I was thinking about this question too. So, again, what do you think about the term outsider? Do either of you identify with that term as a writer or as a person?
Yeah, we were just talking about this today. Literally this afternoon, we were sitting on the couch at the hotel talking, and it was the idea. I was thinking. Actually, I think Nan Golden has talked about this, where she, and I like the confidence of this because I can't say I've always lived this, but it was that idea where she was saying we weren't marginal. We never felt like we were marginal. We were the center of the world. And I think I've kind of felt that, and I think I try to put that in the writing just because it's like your circle of people are actually the center of your world. And so, I've taken it to perhaps extremes as far as things. I don't drive a car, so I like acting really shocked that other people do. Because my whole life people are like, you don't drive? And I'm like, you do? I mean, that's crazy. Why would you get in a car? But I think as far as queer stuff, it's I felt so defined by that when I was younger, that what you're not doing, what's wrong, and at some point I thought, wait, everyone I'm close to and love is similar to me this way, and we're spending a lot of energy responding to a world that, that we're not even really part of, yeah. I'm trying to think what else we said when we were on the couch.
I know. I think it is kind of a double consciousness because I feel like I know. I do identify as an outsider, and yet I think absolutely what you're saying is so true. It's like when I first came to poetry in New York, as part of the scene at St. Mark's Church, and we identified as the church of non-academic poetry. We were very, it was sort of like there was Columbia and all those people up there, and their magazines and journals, but we were like the cool ones, We had this other world, and we weren't in official poetry culture, but we were making poems like artists, And I think that, so we thought, I thought of that as the center of the practice because it was putting poetry in the center of the culture that we cared about. Yeah. But in terms of poetry culture, we were not, we were not the center, by their lights. And I think that those definitions have sort of carried on. I've always thought that people in the world I live in probably make their way more by publicity than by winning things, And it's sort of like, and even though, I've done things like applied for a Guggenheim 25 times and then finally got it. And had a list of what people that I admired, like Carolee Schneemann or Jackson McClough, applied that many times. Like, I would use the fact of their outsiderness as a reason to not be humiliated to apply again and again. But I will also say at this point in time, because I'm still bountifully capable of getting rejected for things, I think about just not ever asking for anything again. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm fine. You know what I mean? I have a career. I'm sort of supported by the world that supports my work. And I'm still amazed by parts of the culture that are absolutely, draw the line at the kind of work we make. And I think there really is, like say something like a press like semiotext is so defining in terms of a certain kind of writing, and I think there are people who aspire to it, but it still is so not the mainstream, and even having been a bit in the mainstream, I was kicked out so quickly, and I don't even know why, it was sort of like I had my HarperCollins moment. It was great. I got I got all this attention. I was like, what is going on? And then it was like, that's over now, and it's back to, kind of things are always better when something nice happens, but, like it's sort of the nature of a career, but, anyway, yeah, I really feel like we know who we are. And it's weird because there are people who are in the, quote, mainstream who want what we have.
Right, they want
Because you can't make it up. You have to have had these experiences. You have to, even things in poetry like ways of talking, like it's sort of, it used to be kind of secret, transmission between poets. You would learn the backstory of this poem, how, like in Ted Berrigan's sonnets, there's a sonnet that is inside out. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of like he wrote a sonnet and then took the two outside lines and put it in the middle and then took the whole and turned the poem, and you wouldn't know that but we all knew that because we were part of the crew that knew Ted, and Ted, that was a famous story, but it's sort of like if you were in a writing program, they would probably have a name for that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It was sort of like, and they would teach it.
Right.
And it's just like it's a different, worldview. So I often, and I think I'm not against MFA programs, but I do feel like there's something that is like experimentation light now.
Yeah.
Because all these different approaches are, mixed in a way, and they don't, in the same way that like in the 80s, MTV really changed the world because it used to be, lived in the East Village and all the junkies had little crucifixes on their earrings with Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? And they got it from the Puerto Rican girls, and it was just like a local thing. And then Madonna did it, and then it was on MTV, and then every kid in the suburb did it.
Right.
And so you couldn't look at a person anymore and decide that you knew something about them by the way they dressed or acted. And it used to be the inside was shown by the outside. And I think that's true with writing practices now, too. There's a kind of a new formalism, and that's very insider-ish,
Well, okay, there's more here. But I'm also struck by that last part, right, like about Madonna or about, like, generally, things that were maybe culturally outside being co-opted and... Right.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder about that, and I think maybe this is kind of related, or not, and it can just be separate things I'm asking. But so I wonder about, how that relates, perhaps to, your own writing, especially, Eileen, as you've been writing for quite a long time, and where, how things that were once outside might be picked up and brought inside, right?
Yeah.
And how that relates maybe to writing and to poetry. And then, well, no, actually, I'm just going to stop there, and then there's another question.
Well, I think I was talking with Richard Porter about this. He's the publisher at Pilot Press, and we were talking about just queer writing and how things had changed, and I don't know which of us was joking about it, but I mean, just talking about, you're sort of looking at the covers of things, and they look sort of the covers of the big 5 type of books that are gay, and they're like, look like bubble tea, like the designs for them. And it's really a thing right now, which I'm not saying it shouldn't be there, but queer joy. And so when I was trying to, not my dead book, but a book before that, which was, positively sunny compared to everything else that I've written. And everybody was like, it's really uncompromising. And I was like, oh, I'm done. Like, that means you're not going to get this book published. And so it's interesting watching, like, what's the acceptable part, I think, that it can kind of do. And I guess I wouldn't say that's like, that someone is, taking something over that was there. But it's interesting watching people that will say, and I don't resent them, but saying authors that I've loved, and they'll name check them, and then you're like, your work's nothing like that. It's really just sort of like, I feel like they have like a band badge on or something, you know? And, but then that the support systemically isn't there for the rest of the writing, that you're not going to be on a bill reading with those people, or your book's not going to be published there. But I don't know if it's, I don't know if that's something that is going to change again too. I mean, how many bubble tea books can you have?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess my mind just goes to my own experience in publishing has been, but routinely rejecting. You know what I mean? It was sort of. I mean, I just feel like I feel inspired by myself, meaning that I've managed to survive, but with having almost every book I've published, and I'm thinking more about prose than poetry, was just really treated, it was unpublishable. I mean, I must have shown Chelsea Girls to 40 people. I couldn't get an agent. There's no agent who would touch it in New York in the 90s, And what people said, was that they would, I mean, it was so great because it was a critique of who they are and who I am, because they would say, well, there's no arc. You know what I mean? There was like, they were looking for a redemptive arc.
Right.
And I said, well, I'm not a practicing Christian. It was just like, what the hell are we talking about? It's really, or that the stories would just kind of disintegrate.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
That is the experience that I recognize,
Yeah.
and that's what's, I mean, it's so, I mean, and it's, it's borne out in so much other literature. I mean, one of my favorite novels is The Blue of Noon by Bataille, and he wrote it during the Spanish Civil War. And it was unpublishable because it was drunken and it was gross. And it was like, you were supposed to write these kind of inspiring things during the Spanish Civil War. And he was just writing about how fucked up people were. And they were all in hotels. And, Simone Weil is there and is in there as an unpleasant character. And it's just amazing. And you really actually would not know. I learned that it was the Spanish Civil War, but there were just sounds of bullets outside of the hotel. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And that was it. And it wasn't published till the 70s because it was regarded as so offensive and so not what we want. Because I remember an older writer at McDowell explaining to me that in the 50s you had to write literature en gage, and whatever the French way of saying that is, and it was like that was the definition of a writer was, in the same way that we might be, and and I think in the 90s there were a lot of, like as a lesbian you had to write about lesbians, and it wasn't that I wasn't, but it was it was a requirement, you needed to keep your gay content up, you had to, and even sex was that way, you had to have a certain amount of sex keep running through the work in order to be defined as part of. So it's just, it's. I think it's a ancient, and I think the world changes and we change the world with literature. But I still do not, and I have just amazing rejection stories. Still, when I think, whoa, I'm really at the top of my game. Look who wants me, and then I write something, and they're like, no. And then they'll do a description of exactly what it is that I do, and they were like, we don't do that.
Right.
Oh, and they basically will say there's no arc.
Right.
That I still write shit without arcs.
Yeah.
And I was like, right.
Right.
Who did you think you were inviting?
Right.
The Archangel Michael? It was just crazy.
We were talking about that it was like when there was something that got rejected and it was they'd asked you. And afterward I was thinking of Richard Pryor had performed somewhere and everyone was pissed off about it afterwards. And Lily Tomlin was like, when you hire Richard Pryor, you get Richard Pryor. And I thought of that with you where it was like, what did you think you were going to get? Like, this something that's, not Eileen. That doesn't make sense.
And I think it is. The idea is that you're being invited someplace nice. So act nice.
clean up. Yeah,
Right?
right.
You know, the fraternity let you in.
Right.
So, like, act like you're grateful, you know? And I was just like, and that's where, you know, still a dog that will bite your leg, and, you know, because that's what we do,
Right.
you know? Grr.
Yeah.
That's why we like dogs. We trust them, you know?
Okay. Thinking about where to move. There are just, there are so many questions here. There's no way we're going to get through all of them. And they're so great. They're all so great. But I'm trying to think of a flow here, and also want to acknowledge that we want to hear from the audience too, and be mindful of the fact that time is a thing that we exist in and with. Okay, so I think I'm going to stick with this because it's been like a good flow of conversation, and then maybe we'll move into audience questions. But as a sort of addendum to the question about identifying or not as an outsider, there's a if so, which you've expressed, where do you find solidarity with others, and what ethics or responsibilities accompany a self-embraced outsiderism, or an outsiderism of any kind? And I think about that both in terms of writing and publishing, but also, of course, in a broader sense.
I mean, I think, well, like having Ripcord come out with semiotext is like that's a group of books it's, to me, feels crazy that it's happening. But that's a group of books that I've been reading since the 90s. That's when I read, I think one of your first poetry collections I read was with them. And so I think there's all of that. And I do think there's a lot of younger queer and trans writers that are really exciting to me. And they're publishing tiny, tiny places. And they just don't give a shit that no one wants their stuff, which I'm blown away by. It's like they're not knocking on the door where no one wants them because they just don't care to be in that room. And I think it took me 20 years to figure that out. So that really impresses me. And I think as far as the ethics of stuff, I feel like my work's very political, even though it's never specifically that always. And a lot of times things that I'm expressing in it are even the opposite of things that I necessarily feel or believe, but that I'm always trying to push that space so that there is a way to talk about class and a way to talk about sex and aging, which is, still like a weird taboo. It's like people don't, it's an uncomfortable thing and kind of a radical place to be, to talk about. And I feel like I kind of am attached to a lot of writers that are also older, because when I wrote my Dead book and I was like, oh God, what is this? And I thought, oh, I'm 50. I'm going to write like it's my late style. Like, even though it's my debut. Like, no one else. But I'm going to write like those books that you read where it's the, 21st book by the person, and they're like, I wrote this on paper bags, and I just don't give a shit anymore, and I'm going to tell you whatever I want to say. And I thought, oh, I'm going to write like that, because those people are radical to me. It is giving, it's putting yourself and your writing into a space where you can say anything. And to me, that's ethical, if that makes sense. But, that it feels like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get nervous when I hear words like ethics and responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, but still, that we have to, but I do think it's sort of like if you're, quote, outside, you're still inside some places, and we know that place, and it's sort of like, and you don't want to shit where you work on all levels at all at all times. And I think, so in a way, it's just, like, for instance, I really hate the term mentor, like it just seems like professionalized relationship, but I do have younger friends, and I support them, and I support their work. If I reject the way the programs or the institutions or the ways that power is distributed or labeled, I then need to make sure that for myself, I participate in the world that I am a part of.
Yeah,
You know, and so if I'm excited about somebody's work, I go, you know, like I judged a contest recently, and of course the person I loved didn't win, you know, and it felt really important to make sure that they knew that they were my number one writer, and
Yeah.
here's my email, and if I can help you in any way, you know, to make that, you know, I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
labor, you know,
Yeah.
and I think whether it's, you know, doing the zine you did,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
or doing pathetic literature, like and continuing to do world making
Yeah.
from the place where you sit
Yeah.
and stand, you know, and it's sort of like, because the thing is, if I experience myself as having some privilege, and I do, even though I'm still aware of the places where I'm unwanted, my privilege is something is a currency,
Yeah.
you know, and I feel like I do feel a responsibility to use it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really fun to, you know, and even, you know, my involvement with East River Park was an attempt. I was like greatly surprised where I wasn't, you know, again, I had to struggle and I didn't have as much power as I thought I had, you know, but I did bring a lot of attention to a really important
Yeah.
cause, and that felt really great, you know.
And it comes naturally. I mean, I think that's the thing, is like the generosity that you show to other writers doing the activism around East River Park. It's like, it's right there in I was thinking a lot about sort of, and I don't mean this actually, but sort of like, how far does my hand reach, in a way? It's like, my politics are sort of there, where it's like, what can I actually affect, really? Not that you don't aim for larger things, but I just feel like it has something, and that carries over. Hopefully, you know, so, yeah.
Okay, there are so many more things I could ask, but I don't want to take all the air. I want to share the air. So, if people out there have questions, and remember, if you're in the room here, if you could raise your hand, and I'll walk a mic over to you, and then you can, the people on Crowdcast can hear you, and then those of you on Crowdcast, again, put your questions in the chat, and I'll check the chat when I have a chance. Check the chat when I have a chance. First question.
It's very Phil Donahue. I love it.
Mine might. Watch out for my cords.
I always like to do this in case the audience is too shy. So a woodland pattern member question. And if it's yes or no, and I hope it's not no, is there a poetry that you return to in times of despair? Either, Fritz, for both of you.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Like a specific poet.
sitting next to them.
Right.
You know, I mean, I would say, yeah, definitely. Just the way you move through the world and your mind works, and the generosity of that, and the presence of that. I mean, obviously, I write a lot about the past, so I think there's always a way where your poetry, for me, lifts me up and puts me in my life. I feel like I notice things that I neglect all the time when I read your work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. In a way, I feel like the question sort of suggests, like, I don't know why it feels like name checking in a way, but because I feel like there is so much writing I return to in those times, and sometimes it's new stuff. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like, you know, people give me stuff, and it'll be some zine and that I'll have sitting there on my, you know, whatever you call the thing that's not a coffee table, it's in front of my couch, you know, and pick it up and think, oh, this is incredible, you know, and I'll just be so happy. But, you know, Ashley D. Escobar's, you know, zine is amazing. You know, I mean, like, I feel like it's just the fact that it's still happening, that people are still making work, you know, and it could be anything from, you know, Lucille Clifton to Jimmy Schuyler to Rilke to, you know, I mean, I just like anybody that I haven't looked at Henry Miller for a long time, but I bet I still love him, you know, because he was so complaining and awful, and, you know, and weirdly promotes this idea that women like sex. I mean, it's just kind of like people were so upset by him in the 60s, you know, because they were like, it's just like he objectifies women, but actually he just makes women kind of like these incredible purveyors of sex, you know, and they like it. You know, and I just like, it always seemed like a great thing. Like, I thought, is that what adulthood is going to be like, you know? I mean, I was just thinking literature, as a category, literature is a place to, you know, that I turn to in despair, to either read or consume or make. And I guess, in a way, though, I think a reading is probably even better, because I can't tell you how many poetry readings I've gone to feeling like shit. And I feel like, ugh, I should go.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. And I feel really bad. And then I would just be blown away by what I heard,
Thank you. Any other questions here in the room? There don't have to be questions, but if you have them, yeah. Okay, pardon my cord.
Thank you. As I was listening to you guys, I was wondering, because Eileen, you said in the 70s you had like so much time, and that your time back then was unwanted, and that you felt like you had all the time in the world to write. And to Nate, you said you're writing, your book is about aging and about death, so it also involves time. And I guess my question is, how do you write now, knowing that time is limited? And then how do you write, like, now that your time is maybe more demanded, or the currency you're talking about?
I mean, I think it's why I wrote Ripcord so quickly, is I kind of felt that pressure, I also was worried that I would finish one book and then I wouldn't write anything again. So I just kind of barreled ahead. But I didn't, for a lot of years, I just was writing on the fly in really small bits of time wherever I could. I used to try to keep a schedule. It seems crazy now, but I used to try to do a writing schedule where I'd get up and sit down and work. And I finally realized where I was like, oh, everything for me comes in like me writing on the back of something and, on my way to work or something else happening. But I think I do feel, I don't know, it's like a great privilege to get to have something published, and it's a great privilege to find spaces to write, rather than it feeling like, oh, I'm just cramming this in between doing things. It always feels, I don't know, it's my life. It's like my mind moving through the day where something will hit me, or I'll overhear something, and that becomes incorporated. But I guess I do, as far as time or being older, I think I just feel, I guess I don't, it's funny, I'm writing about death and aging, but I guess I don't think about it when I'm writing. I don't think about the writing being part of that. It's sort of, I treat it like I have all the time in the world, which is, not true, but I do that, yeah.
I know that's the contradiction, that when you're writing is when you feel you're in the kind of timelessness and the free fall.
Yeah.
And it's so the thing that's liberating. Like I felt bathed in time when I was younger, and now I feel like when I write is when I release that. I find myself in that space of timelessness when I actually do the work. And it's harder because I do feel like it's sort of like I always, for years, I would just accept every gig, every invitation, everything. I needed the money, I needed the work, I needed the exposure, I needed everything. I wanted, and that's a mistake now. And I have to make decisions that are really different and harder, and it's a new, it's almost like aging or having a career is like as a secondary craft. Because there are some people who are, I think whether it's privilege or whatever, you're just brought up to think, oh, I'm very valuable, and I got to say no, I can say no to things, and I don't have that education. Right. I have the other kind of education where I'm kind of worthless, and had to kind of create a more, almost acting as if I'm valuable. And it helps and it works, but it's just like really, because the economy is both the work don't get done unless I stop the world, and also literally that it's like a joke. There's like the thing that's weird about being older is there is this trap door which is called death, and it's just like, it might be, we don't know where it is in relationship to anybody in this room, and that's the uncanniness about the narrative of life, is that you don't know when it will end, and the fact that you're older doesn't necessarily mean you're closer to that. But more than likely. You know what I mean? It's actually, so I try and be as humble in relationship to that. And that's a new thing too, because again, I felt like part of the richness of youth was like the feeling of, I get to waste time because it's great. And I still need to waste time, because if I can't waste time, I can't feel the value of the time that I'm, in or working in, There was something else about that. It was, and I have to say, aging is really, I've often mostly dated people younger than me, and as I've gotten older, it's sort of like there's just this complexity of aging. It's sort of like things I think, things I feel, my body changing, all these things, and it's sort of like, I'm really into it, and I need to be, it's sort of like, as opposed to, if I'm horrified, then I can't take care of this old car. It's sort of like making sure you bring your car into the shop. You got to do it. So it's like I got to stretch, I got to do all these things that are self-care. And it feels, being in relationship with younger people, I would feel a little gross. You know what I mean? It was like too much, it's like, I don't want to expose her to a hospital here, And so, at this point in time, I'm not in a relationship, and I'm feeling very liberated in terms of shame about my body and my aging and my time. And because I need to change my priorities, like no matter who the next person I'm involved with is, whether they're my age or somebody else's age, it's sort of like I need to do my job. And I think part of the thing about being with people who aren't the same age as you is you don't want to expose them to something they don't need to know about yet, but that's not good for me, It's either they have to have a sense of humor about this, or they have to have some not to be too close to it, or they can't be there, and it's interesting. It makes me value my relationships with people closer to my age too, because I think I wanted to say the thing about writing about death and dying and aging is that, you just have, it just needs to be the next funny thing. It has, because it is, it's just like the playwright Joe Orton. He's not very stylish right now, but he was so funny about death. Yeah. You would laugh out loud about the way he would write about it. And of course, he died in a kind of a horrible way too. But I think my father died when I was quite young, and I think I've been making death jokes all my life. It's just that they're a little different now, because I'm making more about my own death, and I'm not like flaunting it. I'm just kind of saying, hey. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I guess on the note of time, maybe it's a good time to wrap things up.
All right.
But I appreciate all of you for being here. One more time for Eileen Myles and for Nate Lippens.
Thank you so much.
I don't know, it's easier. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I would invite you all to stick around, check out the books, and enjoy the company, and have a wonderful night. Thank you.